The Commerce Department reportedly approving nearly all requests of U.S. technology exports to China during its review process. Last year, the department approved 88% of applications, which is slightly less than the year before. But this still sparks major concerns as the U.S. is handing over semiconductors, other important technology secrets, to Beijing. Joining me now, former Deputy National Security Advisor, American Conservative Union board member, and Revolution Trump, Washington and We the People author, KT McFarland. KT, how disturbing is this report about the technology that's being shipped from the U.S. to China?
Well, in and of itself, it should set off alarm bells, because what was the whole point of the last several years of focusing on China? It's that China's stealing our technology. Now they're not even stealing it. We're just giving it to them. They're buying it openly on the open market. But it's a part of a much bigger picture, Dagan, and that's the picture that the administration, the Biden administration, is sending to China and Taiwan. It's all the virtue signaling, photographs of congressmen who were going to Taiwan, all the tough talk to China over Taiwan. And yet at the same time, instead of bolstering Taiwan, instead of standing up to China, they're doing the opposite. So they're talking tough, but they're rolling over with concessions to China, and then rolling over in not giving Taiwan what it needs. I mean, if they really cared about Taiwan, what about a U.S.-Taiwan Trade Relations Act? How about a trade act that allows us to trade more readily, more easily? Those semiconductors that you mentioned, most of them are produced in Taiwan. How about having a way to bolster Taiwan and a way to stand up to China? There's nothing there. This is blue smoke and mirrors. And my concern, bigger picture than even that, is that we are sort of slipping our way into a conflict with China.
We had the semiconductor spending boondoggle, which is just handouts to high margin, rich industry. That's all it was, regardless of the lipstick that they tried to put on it. And it was 17 Republican senators who voted for the stupid thing. China's ambassador to the United States is accusing Washington of escalating the crisis over Taiwan, following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the other U.S. lawmakers their recent trips to that nation, that island nation. And Beijing officials are reportedly making plans for Chinese President Xi Jinping to meet face-to-face with Biden in November. This meeting is expected to take place the week after the midterm elections in the United States. Do you think it happens, KT?
Well, I think if Biden's a fool, he goes. And here's why the timing of that is important. It's not about the U.S. elections. It's about the Chinese elections. So Xi Jinping in October is going to, there's an party Congress that he has. This will be the 20th Party Congress, and it's to elect Xi Jinping for another 5-year term, an unprecedented third term. Xi Jinping has made it very clear that while he is president of China, he plans to get Taiwan back by hook or by crook. And so Xi Jinping will have an election. He'll win this election in the Party Congress, and then Joe Biden is going to go to Peking and to Beijing, and he's going to kowtow. Now, Biden will present this as some great diplomatic coup, two great leaders talking to each other. China and the rest of Asia, what they'll see is an American president bowing down, kowtowing to the newly elected Chinese emperor for life.
Patrice, jump in here, but this is a president who refuses to confront Xi Jinping about the origins of COVID and the fentanyl pandemic and the poisonings that are killing tens of thousands of Americans every year. Patrice, get in here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a travesty that as Americans, we still don't have answers to the origins of COVID. And President Trump has met with the Chinese president, spoken to him. I mean, President Biden has spoken to him several times, and that has not come up apparently in conversations. But KT, I'd love to pick up on a point that you made about when China would make its move on Taiwan. Do you foresee that happening soon? And what are the implications of Russia and Ukraine and that conflict in China's kind of calculations in how it wants to continue to expand its empire?
Well, China will make a move. The question is when they make the move and what kind of move they make. I don't think they invade. I don't think they have to invade. The military exercises they had around Pelosi's visit and the military exercises they're sort of ramping up to have now, it's making very clear to Taiwan and to everybody else, China can take Taiwan by force anytime it chooses. But there are other ways that it can intimidate Taiwan and really effectively have control over Taiwan. You know, cyber attacks. How about a trade embargo? How to circle Taiwan, which is an island, with Chinese vessels so that no other ships of any other nations can get in or out of Taiwan. Now, when will that timing happen? I think by the administration continuing to poke that dragon, continuing to sort of in their face say and do tough things, say things that are tough, never do anything tough, just have those, photo ops, that virtue signaling photo ops. They're forcing the Chinese hand because Xi Jinping, again, he has to be reelected in October. He's got an economy that is slowing down. His handling of the COVID with the all the lockdowns, zero COVID policy, he's got some real issues at home. Will he be tempted before that party Congress, in other words, before the October meeting? Will he be tempted to do something over Taiwan? I think he will. I don't know that he's going to do the whole thing to Taiwan, but I think he's got to stand up to the United States, and I think he has to do something over Taiwan. Otherwise, he goes into that election looking weak.
Well, China's getting closer to Russia. News breaking just this morning, and this is coming from the China Defense Ministry, that the Chinese military is sending troops to Russia for joint exercises.
Yeah, this is America's biggest nightmare, is another Chinese-Russian alliance. In the 1950s, when the communists took over China, our goal for the United States was to somehow drive a wedge between those two. At that point, the Soviet Union was the dominant power, and Chinese was just a lot of people. But now, fast forward to today, they're back together again. And think about the marriage of Chinese technology and Chinese money with Russian raw materials, right, and Russia's domestic position and its sort of geopolitical position. This is our big, we don't, a U.S. showdown with a Russia-China alliance, we don't win that showdown. We better scramble pretty fast to regain the technological high ground, and we sure as heck need allies in the Asia-Pacific region.
And we're handing, by this move toward electric vehicles, and you target and try to destroy our fossil fuel economy, our energy sector, and then
right,
but then you push toward electric vehicles. Well, the metals and materials needed for those batteries come from China, and by extent, and also natural resources that we need from Russia. None of it makes any sense, KT. Great to see you this morning. KT McFarland, thank you so much